that out.
On that note, you have a failure for us to consider today.
I do.
Let me have it.
This will be number 64, if you're keeping track. So the Bible and Christian history are loaded with murder, torture, persecution, and atrocities. I bring this up fairly often. And how do Christians respond? Well, via lame rationalizations, of course. And if you ever hear any of these rationalizations, you can be sure someone's trying to dodge responsibility for some evil. And some of this has been in the news even lately. And if you believe these rationalizations, you're part of the problem. And if you utter them, you're aiding and abetting, as far as I'm concerned. So there's actively perpetrating evil, arguing the evil Bible, and spinning past evil. Actively perpetrating evil. There's a quote from Psalm 108, with God on our side, we will win. He will defeat our enemies. And so God is on our side is the cry of folks that want to, claim that they're on the side of righteousness, whether they are or not. And
it started off as the cry of the Jews, because they were God's chosen people, and so they would continually saying God is on their side. But now it's kind of like, oy vey, God, what are you doing with this?
Right. And of course, there's Gott mit uns, the German phrase, and you can look that up, how that was used. There's Ann Coulter, who had a book called Godless, the Church of Liberalism. So if the other side doesn't have God, then you'd have God, and so it's kind of her way of saying God is on her side. So there's the claim of divine guidance, and I call bullshit, of course, because it would be helpful to prove that a God exists first, and then you can start using him for your advertising if he consents, perhaps. But it is true that God is party to some pretty evil shit in the Bible, and so maybe he is on your side. And we're on the side of humanity.
That's kind of an interesting point, though, about whether or not God consented. Because if I were to go like on Twitter and say, something just outrageous, and then I said, Don Baker agrees with me, and then you never said anything,
right?
Your silence would be viewed as
tacit
admission.
Right.
So. That's the only sort of agreement that we ever get from a God, is this tacit silence.
Right.
And so if there is a God, then he must be in agreement with all of the worst things that he's been saddled with, because he hasn't bothered to set the record straight.
That's right. I agree with that. That's right. Well, if you're arguing about the Bible, I often hear, well, that was the Old Testament. Don't you love that, Matt?
It's my favorite.
And wasn't that the same perfect God and the same moral code? Or are you calling God a screw-up, that he had to, come and fix things?
But God is a screw-up in the book.
He is a screw-up. Yeah.
It's like he starts and then it goes bad. And then he says, oh, I got a way to fix it. And then it goes bad. And he's like, oh, I can fix that too. And then it goes bad. And he's like, fuck it, I'm going to have to kill everybody except for this family. And then it goes bad. And then, all right, well, instead of trying to save everybody, I'm just going to save the Jews. And then it goes bad. And it's a comedy of failures.
Oh, yeah. It would be a comedy if it weren't such a tragedy. And the stuff in the New Testament is far worse. Jesus is follow him or be tortured. So that's far worse than
Why can't I do both?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I would say you can.
And if God needs to revise his perfect moral code, why not get the latest version, which might be the Quran or the Book of Mormon, right? You should be using those.
Or the Book of Eric, which Eric must have taken with him because it's not here.
Okay. Vern filed some of the books. So if God messed up the first time, and what makes you think you got it right the second time or the third time, or how can you trust any of it?
One of the apologetics, of course, is that God didn't mess up at any of those times. It was flawed human beings that messed up, except that God's the one that created flawed human beings with the expectation that they weren't going to be flawed. So he fucked up even worse.
Right. And then he punished the human beings for being, yeah. Another phrase you hear is God had to change his message for the times, and that's often used with slavery. I don't think I need to unpack that. When apologizing for Christianity's evil past, I hear, those weren't true Christians. They weren't, believers like I am. And this is, of course, a no true Scotsman fallacy, right? It's moving the goalposts. And how do Christians differ through the times really? We have the same holy book, the same blind faith, the same relationship with God, the same God, blah, blah, blah. And it always seems that this definition of true Christian is always changing and flapping in the wind depending on whatever is going to be self-serving for the person who's using this.
Sure.
And that's how it is. And you know, these people who have done evil might be marching under the banner of Christianity, but if you claim they're not true Christians, you guys need to figure out who is the true Christians and let us know. It's not the atheist jobs to fix your problems, and it seems very clear to me that there will never be a Christianity test because there's just too damn much money to be made duping the gullible and casting a wide net and bringing in as many people as possible. So you guys could fix that if you wanted. Spinning past evils. Here's another one. The devil made me do it. And this reminds me of the old Flip Wilson sketches from the 70s. You have to be a certain age to remember these. But he portrayed a woman, Geraldine Jones, who had a phrase, "The devil made me buy this dress." And it was all very, very, very humorous. And he made the phrase, "the devil made me do it," kind of a common phrase throughout the United States.
I have a friend who's unlikely to see this, but I'm going to say this just for her benefit. Gangster rap made me do it.
Okay. All right. So both with the Vatican abusive clergy issue, they've used tools of Satan to describe, you know, this thing, and you know, Satan's in charge apparently. Here's a quote: "Because he's marvelous Pope and worthy successor to John Paul II, it's clear the devil wants to grab hold of him," concerning Pope Ratzinger. Recently in the Baptist sex scandal has been excused as demonic. And my response to this is, if the devil's running your organization, maybe they should be shut down so that they don't do any more harm. Anyway, here's another one. We're all sinners. So this is one of the most annoying ones to me. It's like saying we're all human, but not all. Some humans don't have to rationalize their evil shit because they're not doing it. So this is really kind of a lame excuse. And atheists, of course, don't recognize sin as a meaningful concept. We're not about sticking up our heads up the butt of an invisible mass-murdering monster. And we do recognize an affront to humanity when we see one. And so screw the sin stuff. Here's another one. Thou shalt not judge. Or God will get you for pointing out my evil. And this is nothing more than an agreement between thugs. And this nothing good can come from this attitude. And I want people to judge me. I want people to tell me when I'm screwing up so that I can make things better. And I reserve the right to do the same. And that's how we make the world a better place. And that's kind of the basis of secular morality, is we figure out what's wrong and we go fix it. Finally, in conclusion, Christianity and other religions seem to have some challenges in the personal responsibility front. And since personal responsibility is not on the agenda, rationalization is the next best thing, or is it best? I'm not so sure. It seems to work okay with the gullible, the people that are known as sheep, and it does not work with atheists and people that have a strong moral compass. And there really is no excuse for this evil, and so why double down and try to spin it? The actual evil and the lame rationalizations and spin are both failures of Christianity. Okay.
And obviously nobody will bother disagreeing with that. So
okay. We got some assent in the audience.